Welcome to Level Up with Winnie Sun.
Well, hello everybody and happy Tuesday to you. First off, I gotta say a quick happy birthday to my longtime business partner, Brandon Chang. It is his birthday and we celebrated definitely team style, pandemic style, but nonetheless, happy birthday, my one of my best friends on the whole planet. So let's start with the financial markets. As you know, lots happening again, and sort of what I call the stimulus saga continues, because unfortunately, we're close to the 48-hour period of time that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said was so important for us to meet, for us to have stimulus support before the election for so many Americans that continue to struggle. But unfortunately, still nothing. So no surprise there, right? So some of you heard me say this yesterday. Don't think a deal is coming anytime soon, my friends. Hopefully I'm wrong. I'm hoping to be wrong today. And hopefully we'll get some good news today. But the Dow closed up 113 points. NASDAQ closed up 37 points. So all around pretty good. If you're looking at your 401k plans later today, you're probably going to think, could be better, but I'll take it, right? On other matters, let's talk about Snapchat. Definitely Snapchat impressed, surprise earnings, so they ended up today. And we continue to see economic growth. In fact, GDP is expected to increase by over 30% here in the United States. Also, I thought this was really interesting. Did you know about half of the new subscribers to Netflix right now are coming from Asia Pacific? That's right. So truly, we are in a global economy. On that note, Tuesdays are very special because I get to invite a special guest. And this guest that I'm having today, I feel like this is a true treat, because like Annie Nova, let me just bring her in. Let's welcome Annie Nova. She is with CNBC. Annie, so great to have you here. She's a reporter on the personal finance team. And let me just say, as you know, I'm a big Annie fan. I read all her content. And today, actually, we just had the CNBC Financial Advisors Summit earlier today. But Annie, thank you so much for being here. And I love this because this is, for those of you who are watching, this is a chance to meet the media. These are the people that are bringing you news that you really can use, right? Personal finance during the pandemic. Annie, I just want to start with this. First off, I'm missing you on the East Coast. How are you doing? How are you holding up during the pandemic?
I am doing relatively well. Thanks so much for having me, Winnie. I'm really looking forward to this.
Well, I know you're always busy, and I know right now your content specific is so high in demand because so many Americans and people even outside the United States are reading and trying to figure out how to survive financially during this pandemic. But I like to start from a little bit, back up a little bit. I think many people that are watching you will say, wow, she's so young. She's at CNBC, and she's already, and I will say that you're also extremely busy, probably more busy now during the pandemic than ever. How did she get to where she is? How did she get to be in this position? Maybe you could share a little bit with our viewers how you got to where you are.
For sure. So I guess it starts off usually in childhood. So for me, my mom was pretty bad with money, actually, and was like a big overspender, made a lot of mistakes. And I gravitated towards personal finance in an effort to try to have a healthier relationship with money myself and to understand how other people could do that as well. Also, as a millennial, as someone who has student debt, so much of my generation is burdened by student debt, other issues like wage stagnation. And I wanted to try to help people in that situation, myself included, have a healthier financial life and be able to achieve some of the goals that can feel so impossible for us.
I love that. Annie, one of the things we've noticed in the financial industry, and certainly financial advisors, advisory business, is really concerned about being able to attract that next generation. We know the average age of financial professionals is somewhere in the 50s, sometimes a lot are in their 60s and 70s and beyond. I actually learned that statistic from the CNBC summit today. But when you think about like millennials and younger, right? What gives you hope about personal finance? Do you feel like the next generation is going to be better with their money, or do you think we still have a lot of room to go?
No, I definitely have a lot of hope. I think that, as I said, we have a lot of obstacles against us, but we also have more information than ever. We have, and there's a lot of curiosity, and people want to, they want to achieve certain things, and they want to understand what's stopping them from doing it. And I just think that just because the goals have become harder to do, such as owning a home or saving for retirement, it doesn't mean that people don't want to do that. They therefore want to understand the challenges and want to figure out how to get there. And yeah, again, it's just increasing awareness is really important. But the people I speak to, my friends, sources, there is a lot of financial anxiety, but that anxiety seems to also push people to want to understand more and to want to be responsible. My sister recently, she's just 21. She's already saving for retirement. She knows the obstacles. She knows Social Security is likely not to be enough, that she's likely not to be offered a pension through work. And so she knows, well, I have to start saving right now.
Wow. So let me ask you this. Is your sister just a superstar, or is it because her sister is a personal finance reporter at CNBC? Have you been rubbing off her, or is this something that runs in the family?
I might have played a small role, been a bit of a nag, but also I think she is very responsible. And she said to me something great, like, so much of Gen Z talks about self-care and, learning ways to take care of yourself. And she said, I can't think of a better way to do that than to make sure that I'm not going to, be in poverty in retirement, that I'm going to be able to take care of myself if and when I can't work anymore.
I mean, how amazing, Annie, at 21 years old, right? If only we could reach more people at 21 years old and get them excited about saving for retirement, which is what you do, actually, because I will say back in the day when I first started learning about personal finance and the stock market and everything else, it was reading work, not from you yet, because you probably weren't even born yet, but, it was reading articles on different financial news outlets and learning from other people's experiences to be able to kind of structure my own future plans, right? So even when you're in your late teens, in your early 20s, you might not know exactly what retirement looks like or is going to feel like, but that understanding of knowing that you need to save and not spend on things you don't need is so powerful at such a young age. So what I'd love to hear from you is, we're going through this pandemic, and I know the team at CNBC is working so hard. And I know that because I'll reach out to you all and everyone's so busy. So how do you think the pandemic has changed personal finance and financial planning? What do you think?
Yeah, great question. I think that many of the issues that existed before still exist and have just gotten worse. So, everything from before, for example, I mentioned wage stagnation. Well, I hear from a lot of people who say, I was on my way to getting a promotion. I was on my way to getting a raise. And now I'm just grateful, but I haven't been laid off. So I'm not going to ask my boss for that raise. Or maybe I spoke to another woman recently who had been a contractor she was 39 years old, and she'd had only contract temporary positions, which are becoming more and more common instead of full-time employment. And she was 39. Finally, she landed a full-time job with benefits. She was ecstatic. A few months into the pandemic, a few months on the job, she was laid off. Now she's applying to contract positions again. So I think a lot of people have been really set back. And it's hard to find someone who's not in some way impacted. Either you've lost your job, or you've been furloughed, you don't know if you're going to come back, or you have your job, but you're still concerned. So much is changing. So many industries have been totally upended. So there's a lot of anxiety, and personal finance and personal finance journalism tries to give people advice about what to do, but it can only go so far when there's so much uncertainty. So I think there's an understanding of that we're kind of all in a wait and see mode. So much is changing right now. That being said, I think there is a lot of advice that people need and can benefit from. And that involves in somewhat embracing the uncertainty and then kind of being able to not despair and to realize what you are in control of, what you can do with whatever resources you have.
I love that. That's really helpful. And I think it puts a lot of things in perspective. Like you said, if you were always a contract employee and then you went to full-time and you're able to at least go back and sort of fall back on be able to find contract work again. One thing, Annie, I'm curious about, and you don't have to have an answer for this, but maybe you can get some perspective. Is, I'm hearing more people say, next time around, I might decide instead of doing contract work, right? I might actually consider getting a full-time job at a traditional 9 to 5 where I have benefits and I have, the 401k and I have a bigger entity to fall back on because of the pandemic, right? They said the pandemic has showed me the importance of being at a big company that has the cash flow perhaps to weather the storm. Have you heard that in your experience?
I definitely hear from people a desire for stability and more security. So I haven't heard that in particular, but that makes so much sense to me that, it's really hard to make it on your own. And it is true that if you work for a larger company, you're going to have more safeguards, hopefully. At the same time, I think a lot of people who, worked for major airlines have been laid off. Other companies that are really struggling right now. If you were a software engineer at Uber, maybe you felt very secure. But then the company, there's a big question if Uber will be able to continue in the form it did with travel so curtailed and for such a long period of time. So that makes sense. I also hear the opposite, where people have been laid off from a large company, or maybe just a smaller mid-sized company, and now they're trying to figure out how to make it on their own. And maybe they before thought they couldn't make it as a freelancer, and that seemed too intimidating, but they're realizing they're making just as much, if not more, working for themselves. So I think you'll see it happen in both directions.
I agree. I think you're right. I think, and that's exciting. I mean, that's what's beautiful about being here in the United States is you have choice and you have options, certainly. One thing we've noticed is with the pandemic, it seems like a lot of issues have changed. I'm certainly sure that the topics you were covering pre-pandemic and now during the pandemic definitely has been a greater shift, right? Certainly we've seen in terms of social media content and right now, a lot more traction around the stimulus. Everyone's paying attention to that. How have issues changed for you and what you're covering?
Yeah, for sure. My beats definitely changed pretty quickly. So before the pandemic, I was writing, I won't say exclusively, but very heavily about the student debt crisis. I was writing about people dealing with student debt, what it was like making those monthly payments, how, in the 1990s, the average student loan balance was around $10,000. It's now closer to $30,000. 70% of college graduates will have student debt. It makes it harder to start a business, to buy a house, to save for retirement. Pretty much every other financial goal in some way is compromised. And I spent a lot of time writing about that. Now, in the first stimulus package, the student loan payments the federal student loan payments were suspended. At first until September, or first until for a few months, and now I believe it's for longer. But with people being able to put their student loan payments on hold, their priorities and concerns have shifted. So I did a story recently on what it's like living without student loans, and it's really interesting. You see a lot of people in my generation for the first time saving for a down payment on a house, or not having to work 3 jobs anymore because they don't have that monthly student loan payment to meet. So I've written less about student debt, actually, while people have gotten a break from it. And I've been writing a lot. I've just gravitated sort of naturally toward housing issues. And I've been writing a lot about rental concerns that renters have, about meeting their rent, about eviction, and what is an eviction crisis, which is supposed to be pretty severe due to the pandemic.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We do know so many people are struggling, right, to make rent, and like for many people, they're already facing eviction, and with unfortunately the stimulus saga, we don't have closure for them or the sense of relief, especially in such a strong country like the United States. Hopefully, we'll have positive, supportive news stronger than ever. One thing, Annie, I'd love for you to talk about a little bit, and this is something we've heard a lot about. We've read on CNBC how more people now are saving. Right? You just talked about how younger people, someone who doesn't have student debt and has been able to sock away for that down payment. We also know millennials tend to be much better savers than some previous generations too. Do you think that will continue post-pandemic? How do you feel about the current savings, patterns right now? Do you think this is just going to be during the pandemic, or do you think some of these habits will continue on?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, for so many people who are out of work, it's just about surviving right now and meeting your bills, and there's a lot of financial insecurity. But then there's a lot of people that have benefited in some ways for these changes. And you're always, in these kind of big moments in history, there's always going to be people who, there's change and innovation and reflection. And I think that a lot of people are rethinking, for example, the guidance around emergency savings accounts. Typical advice is that you want 3 to 6 months of expenses in a stored away in a bank account that you could access pretty easily. But I think some people are saying, well, this pandemic could easily last, or if in not an extreme form, the effects could somewhat go on for close to 2 years. So should I have an emergency savings account that is much larger? And I think that's a really fair question. I think a lot of people will do that. I think people also it's just made people realize that how out of control you can be about what happens. This pandemic is nobody's fault, and nobody predicted that there would be a pandemic, short of maybe a few scientists. So people are definitely feeling like they want to be more prepared, and if they're still employed, there's I think from what I'm hearing, anxiety around spending right now when we just don't know what's going to happen. And I think that will continue. I think that this is a traumatic event. People are going to remember a pandemic, and they're going to think, well, what if this happens again? The last pandemic, of course, was the Spanish flu in early 1900s. So we've gone 100 years, but there's no guarantee that we'll go another 100 years. And there's no guarantee that there'll be no other crises in different form.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's no guarantee that there's another crisis. I mean, we're talking about global warming. We're talking about more and more different types of viruses and whatnot that could be upon us. So having that plan and saving, I think it's really powerful. And I like that you shared this, Annie, because it's making me think, there's certainly a lot of silver linings. I think one of the silver linings is that we are more mindful of the importance of saving, right, for those emergencies. And also, if you think about it, like yourself and your sister and my kids, even like the next generation is much more aware of the importance to save as well. I think I can even see, like, my kids are very young, but even now, like even my 7-year-old, he's like, I don't really need to save. I don't really need to spend that money. Maybe I'll save it away, and let's just in case, let's just wait until the pandemic, or he calls it the coronavirus, is over, and then we'll figure it out later. I think that's important. And maybe if we look back, who knows, maybe this will be something that the next generation will improve on and just build from there. One thing that we've definitely touched upon was that people are spending less during the pandemic, right? We're seeing that across the board. Interesting enough, though, you probably saw this too, Amazon Prime days last week, people still spent a lot of money. And with the new iPhone coming out, people still spent a lot of money buying that new iPhone. So I don't know maybe it's just going to be they're spending more on just these two instances. But I wonder, I know neither of us has a crystal ball, but what do you think? Do you think this will change spending habits? Do you think going into the holidays, maybe the numbers won't look as good for the retailers? I know that's just
Yeah, I think I have two answers to that. So one, I think that spending is going to dramatically change. For example, like, people spend so much money on the clothing that they're going to wear to work, about, being office friendly and office appealing. But again, if so many people are working from home now, and even when offices start, there's a question of how many companies will have their employees come back full time into the office. How many might just say, hey, remote work has really worked for us, so we don't need to do that. And if that changes, then maybe people are going to be spending less on suits and, ties and high heels even. So there's going to be, and you can kind of wear the same outfit a few days in a row, maybe, if you're working from home. So I think, yeah, that's one way that spending will change. I think people are going to be going out to eat less. Travel, of course, is really curbed. People are becoming more comfortable at home. I know that a huge change for me is before the pandemic, I never, ever cooked. I completely was like your typical New Yorker, busy person who relied on takeout and would not ever admit how much I spent on that. But I've been home so much more, and I've been cooking. I've gotten into cooking and I love it. And my food budget has really dwindled. So I think these are really big changes. The words of caution that I would add is I think that companies are very smart at finding ways for us to spend. And the desire to spend and the gratification that spending gives us is not going to change too quickly. So companies are marketing us in a way of, work from home attire and, different lighting for your Zoom meetings. And I think that we still have to, as always, be on guard and be restrained when it comes to how much we're spending.
This is so true, Annie. I think, even today on the CNBC summit, we're talking, there was a whole conversation about virtual meetings. And there was like literally in the chat window, tons of discussions about what lighting you should get for your Zoom meetings. And you're right, because so many retailers now, well, you're not buying certain work clothes, right? So now they're selling, I guess I heard this, that there's more people buying leisure wear than ever before, right?
Yeah.
For yoga pants, out of control. um, but it's so true. There's all those things, and I'm with you, Annie. I'm like I have become so good at home cooking. I almost don't want to buy order food to be delivered, because I'm like, I could just make it myself, and it would probably taste just as good, and I would get so much. I'd be able to feed the whole family for one meal. So,
right. Yeah, for sure.
And it's very empowering. It's really fun. So let me ask you this, Annie. So like, how is your situation right now? Are you all working from home? How often do you go to work? Obviously, New York's gone through quite a big transition during the pandemic.
Yeah, for sure. So CNBC is being very cautious. From what I understand, there's no immediate plan to go back to the office, and I think that we're finding by and large that productivity has not waned. You could hardly tell from you can't tell from our website that all of us are now working from home instead of in a newsroom. So I think that this could be a lasting change in some ways for some people. And I have not gone into the office. I've not gone into my office since mid-March. I remember when they made the announcement that we were working from home, we all thought it was going to be for a week or 2 weeks, and we just haven't been back. I kind of miss my books that are on my desk, but have not gone back, and there's no immediate plan to go back.
Well, it looks like I won't be going back anytime soon anyways, because I loved going just to see you and see Jim and see everybody there. And I actually saw on the summit, they were filming, off the railing where we sat before. And I was like, oh, I missed it there. But then I know you guys are working from home. I guess we're good, because I think last time I saw you all was in February, but right before it got crazy. One thing. Last question before we get into some fun right now is, for someone who's watching and is asking how they can financially plan with so much uncertainty, what would you say?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that the first thing I would say is that it's really important not to blame yourself right now, and not to be too hard on yourself. This is such an uncertain time for so many people. Again, to cite my sister, she just graduated college. A lot of her friends are sending out applications, and they're hearing nothing back. And they're all, bright, great students. It's not their fault. It's out of their control. It's so easy to lose sight of the bigger picture and to blame yourself. But again, this pandemic wasn't caused. It's nobody's fault. Still, there are things you can do. There are people, again, who are pivoting. My roommate actually was a big event planner. And once the coronavirus pandemic hit, she thought, well, I'm totally in trouble. I plan events that require mass gatherings, but she's been doing those event plannings over Zoom, and she's it's really taking off. So I would really urge people to think about how their skills are not all of a sudden useless. They're able to be used. You just think about, well, how can I use these in a way that is remote friendly? And you'll probably come up with a lot of ideas. You can talk to other people who are doing this. I would think about, saving as much as you can right now with whatever income you're having, reducing spending, finding ways to cook instead of eat out, and, looking ways to, save money. If you have the option of moving in with parents for a bit, explore that, do whatever you can to reduce expenses if you feel you need to. And just remember that while this is a very dark time, it does pose the opportunity for reflection and introspection about ways forward.
I love that, Annie. So helpful. In fact, I think that's a great reminder to be kinder to ourselves and to spend a little time to reflect. Self-awareness is powerful. And, I'm going to take a question, because Get It Hair actually shared a great question. And her question was, is it time to start a business? Annie, what do you say?
Well, I think it's a good question in that you're being bold and you're thinking about what else you can do. I think it really depends what kind of business that is, of course, and the risks that you're going to take, like any other financial decision. How much money is it going to require that you put into? So you want to think about that. And I would talk to other people. If you're interested in a certain type of business, talk to people who have started that business. What did they get wrong? What did they get right? How was that business doing in the pandemic? These are questions you probably want to explore before you do it. But, to go back to what we said previously, this is a time where a lot of people are looking for certainty and security. And maybe that could, starting a business or being in charge of your own income stream could be one very empowering way to do that.
I love that. And I think that's such good advice, Annie, of like definitely doing your survey before you start a business. It definitely helps you quite a bit, and also can save a lot of pennies in your pocket too from making those mistakes. And you can sort of build a network too. I love that. All right, it's time for a little fun. Are you all ready? Those of you who watch each and every day, you know what's coming up. It's called the speed round. Oh, this is one of my most favorite times of the show. All right, Annie, here we go. What's one thing that you're doing differently from the pandemic that you'll continue and likely continue after the post-pandemic?
I really, really love working from home. I find that I'm just as productive. I like being able to take a shower at noon or take a walk around my apartment at 2 p.m. And I'm definitely planning, haven't told my editor this yet, but potentially asking him if there's, when and if we do go back, if there's an option for a few days a week to be able to continue working from home. I love it.
I didn't think I would love it too, but I actually do love it. All right. I love this question. All right. Favorite spot in the CNBC building? Go.
Absolutely. There are these glass phone booths, and they look like old-fashioned phone booths, but they're glass, and you can go in them, and it's super private, and I could do interviews there. I really miss those. It felt like the most private place on earth.
Okay, next time I go, I definitely want you to take me there so I can take a look, and we can take a picture there. All right. Quick question, Annie. What's your favorite app on your phone?
Okay, so this is pretty predictable for a journalist, but definitely Twitter. I get all of my mainstream news, but also get to hear from people.
I love it. I love it. As a Twitter fan, that just sings to my heart. Annie, such a treat. I will tell you, honestly, I missed you. So I'm glad that we were coming together. And thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge. And for all of you who are watching us from the different social channels, as you know, we go live each and every day. The stock market is open on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitch, and Twitter, of course. And so if this is helpful, definitely share this information with a friend. But let's come back real quick. Annie, for people to learn more about you, I'm going to guess you're very active on Twitter. Where can they follow you and obviously your work?
Sure. So you can just go to cnbc.com/Annie Nova for all my articles. My Twitter handle is @AnnieReporter. And definitely check out the stories that I'm writing as well as my team. We're trying to keep everyone as informed as possible during this trying time. But again, lots of silver linings. We'll come out of this stronger.
We will come out of this stronger. We certainly will. And we're very excited to be here all with you. And those of you who are watching, quick shout out, get it here. We see Jim, we see Katarina, we see Mobile Matt, we see so many of you. So thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, remember, this is like really fun episode because this is what I call Meet the Press episode. And you're actually getting a chance to meet the one and only Annie Nova. Totally someone I consider a friend, someone I really enjoy spending time with. And she's here with you. And we're both here from our homes and we're doing this. So absolutely, things will get better. And we are here for you. Have any other personal finance questions or money questions, as always, you can tweet them or send them to us via message, and we'll do our best to get back to you. On other matters, I will see you again tomorrow. Looking forward to you to answering your questions. And don't forget, if those of you who are on Twitter, just like Annie, jump on our tweet chat tomorrow. It's going to be following at #WinnieSun. That'll be 11 a.m. for those of you on the West Coast, and that'll be 2 p.m. for those of you on the East Coast. We hope to continue the conversation and continue to get through this pandemic together. Thank you so much. Stay well and take care now.